Hi, I'm Lindsay.
Hi, I'm Christy, and we work with Globe International.
Working with missionaries, we hear stories of the struggles, the humor, God's goodness, and a little side of crazy.
Hey, that's who we are.
This is Crazy Missionary Stories. Hello, and welcome back to Crazy Missionary Stories. Today we are interviewing Kelly Fahnestock, who has been on the mission field for 5 years. So Kelly, did I say your last name right?
Fahnestock.
Okay,
Yep.
good. All right, Kelly, tell us what you're currently doing on the mission field.
Well, currently I just joined Globe International, so I'm at home in America, fundraising, getting that support base up so I can go back to Africa, where I have been the last 5 years, going back and forth. And my home base when I go back in January is going to be in Rwanda. And then I will take short trips over to Kenya. So in Rwanda, there are a few different organizations that I work with. The first one is Hope Rwanda. That's the one that when I did a mission trip in 2019, that's the one I started with. And so I still partner with them. Usually they have a trip called Hearts of Hope, where some ladies, mostly from Canada, come over, and we work with ladies in a tailoring program. So we have their graduation for them, and then we meet the new ladies that are coming into the program. So we go to their houses. Sometimes their houses are teeny tiny. Go to their houses, meet with them, read Psalm 139 to them, and then just speak to them whatever the Lord is putting on our hearts to tell them. So that's kind of a little bit of that ministry, but then the main one that I'll be working with now is called Rabagirana, and that means shine in Kinyarwanda. And it's a ministry that is really focused on healing and peace and reconciliation. So Rwanda had a genocide in 1994, and these workshops were developed afterwards. A lady from the UK came and developed this material that we use. It's called Healing Hearts, Transforming Nations. And it's like a 3-day workshop, 2 or 3 day workshop that we take people through, and it talks about God's original intention for relationships, talking about the Trinity and God's perfect relationship, how prejudice came in, us being a holy nation. And then we talk about the church as an agent of change, God in suffering, the wounded heart, the thief, forgiveness, reconciliation, repentance, and blessing one another. So it takes them through this whole broad spectrum of different topics, and we have some dramas within that. We have little workshops, we call them, or ministry times where we have a father, mother figure, and they're able to receive love from them. And some of them have really never received the love of a father before. So it's a really cool opportunity. And then we have a cross workshop where they take their burdens and their pains, write it on a piece of paper and then nail it to the cross. And then we burn it. And then they also have an opportunity to say any words, and if they've lost someone that they haven't been able to say goodbye to, it's an opportunity for them to do that. And so Rwanda with the genocide, a lot of times they didn't know who was killed, or if they're still alive, or because they're still finding bodies today, even 30 years later. So it's really an opportunity for them to really give that over to God. Yeah. And then we have a standing in the gap time where we have people that come up and will ask for forgiveness of a people group. So the Hutus who committed a lot of the genocide killings would ask for forgiveness from the Tutsi. And we actually have people that will come up, and the Hutu will sometimes get on their knees, and the Tutsi will lift them up and embrace each other. So they're really powerful workshops. And then Rabagirana has been working in a community nearby where the government has basically set up like ex-perpetrators on one side and survivors on another side.
Wow.
And for a time they weren't even like communicating with one another. But as we go in and we do these workshops and they continue to go back to them and have unity groups, is what they call them, just for them to meet together. Like, we've seen change, and they now like make jellies together, make pottery, play soccer, like all these things. And it's a really powerful ministry.
Wow, I'm sure that's so awesome to witness.
Yeah, so I'm curious to know how you got into Rwanda and with this ministry. I think when we originally talked, when I met you a year or two ago, it's been a while, maybe 3. I'm not sure on the time frame, but you were talking about Kenya.
Right.
And so this with Rwanda, this is a huge deal. How'd you come across this ministry? How'd you get involved there?
Yeah, so I originally started with Hope Rwanda, and as I was doing ministry with Hope Rwanda, when I was like planning to come back over to Africa, someone from Kenya had reached out to me to come to Kenya. So I had been going to Kenya for a while too. But then I like came back to Rwanda, and then I was working with Hope. We were going on these visits to visit the ladies, and a counselor or like a friend came along for one of these. They invited him along, and we were in the back of the bus, and we started talking, and I was sharing a little bit about like my past and like what I've been doing. And Baraka was like, "You need to go to this workshop," and it was in Kenya. He's like, "You have this love for Kenya too," and there's a lot of conflict in Kenya, but he worked for this organization in Kenya called WAPE, Way of Peace, and he's like, "You need to go do this Healing Hearts Transforming Nations workshop." So in June of 2023, I went, and you go through the workshop yourself, which for me was super powerful, and I realized that there are things inside of me that I thought I had dealt with, but I hadn't, and it like brought some of those up. Wow. Like I said, through some of those like little workshops that we did in the middle, like being able to lay flowers. When I was on the mission field in 2019, my grandmother passed away when I was en route from Uganda to Kenya. And so it was like I had this opportunity in Kenya to like lay her to rest then, because I didn't go home for the funeral. So like even for me, it was impactful. So we like went through the 3-day workshop, and then we were trained how to do it, to become facilitators. And then we went out and did practicum in Kenya. So after that, like I really enjoyed it, and then I was back in Rwanda, and WAPE and Rabagirana, they're like kind of sister organizations. So some people from Rabagirana were actually at the training, and people were talking to me like, we really think that you did a good job during your practicum. Like, we'd love for you to like facilitate more. So yeah, for a while I was debating about, okay, I have this love for both Rwanda and Kenya, so like where do I want to be? And yeah, I thought I was going to Kenya for the longest time, and then recently, like September, I was like, no, like I feel like God's calling me to Rwanda.
Going back a little bit, how did you feel the call to missions?
Growing up my whole life, like I love to serve, like that's, I think, just part of who I am. And I never really thought that I'd be a missionary. Like growing up, I wanted to be a veterinarian like my whole life. Yeah, I loved animals, and like if you knew me, like anyone would be like, she wants to be a vet.
Aw.
So that was like my dream growing up. My dad passed away suddenly in 2008, and I think that kind of shifted some things. And then I kind of wanted to go into grief counseling. So I ended up like studying psychology. When I studied psychology, I didn't really enjoy, I'd say, like the counseling classes that I took, but I enjoyed the psych classes, and then I also took a lot of sociology classes. So like just the combination of both of them. And then I ended up working with adults with intellectual disabilities, so like the abnormal side of psychology. So like I had that psych, like degree, like all those classes, information. And I studied abroad in 2011 in New Zealand with the college. And I think that kind of opened my eye to like, oh, there's a bigger world outside than just little old Carlisle, Pennsylvania. So that was exciting. And then when I graduated from college, my friend and I decided to go to a big music festival in Mount Union, Pennsylvania. And this was called Creation Northeast.
Oh, yeah.
I've been to that one.
Yeah. been to that
Yeah,
one.
and unfortunately it's no longer like running.
Oh,
but
really?
Yeah, they like
Maybe we went to the last
May
one.
have,
closed it down after like 44 years.
My goodness.
Yeah, but I went to Creation and they have like all these Christian artists there, and then they have like all these booths with like Compassion International, World Vision, like all these different organizations. And there was an organization there called Adventures in Missions, and they were like advertising the World Race, which is a mission trip to 11 countries in 11 months. And I was like, wow, like that's pretty amazing. Like you get to serve people, you get to travel the world. Like, wow, that's pretty amazing. So I like picked up one of the pamphlets and I just heard the word go.
Wow.
So I was like, okay. But like I had just graduated from college. I just had accepted a job at the place where I was working, where I had interned at with these adults with intellectual disabilities. And I had my student loans. And I'm like, can't do this right now. But I kept telling people about it. And eventually, like in 2017, I think it was December, like I finally applied. And then 2018 was accepted, and then 2019 I actually went on it. So that's kind of, like that got me interested in missions. I had gone on like a few church mission trips, but nothing outside of the United States. So this is my first time, the World Race, going outside the United States. And yeah, when I was in Rwanda actually I was like, I want to come back and I want to be in Rwanda.
Wow.
Wow.
So the world race then, 11 countries in 11 months. Does that mean that's literally 1 month in each country, or did you have a training time before and after and there were shorter periods in the countries?
Yeah. So we had a training camp in October before we left, which was like a week and a half. But then we left January, came back in November. So pretty much like one country, 1 month, except my squad, we actually got to go to 12 countries because our last month we hiked the Camino, so Porto, Portugal to Santiago de Compostela, Spain.
Wow.
So we hiked 280 kilometers, living life on mission to get us prepared to come back to the real world and live life on mission.
Wow, that sounds very adventurous.
Yeah. So what kind of things did you do on the world race?
Yeah, so we did all kinds of things, and it really opened my eyes up to missions because, like, when I did missions with my church and everything, it was usually like physical labor. You go and you paint, and or you do VBS, you know, like things like that. But on the world race, it was my first month. We did a lot of work at a homeless shelter. Like we served people, but they also had Bible studies. We went out to the streets and handed out bread and sugar water and shared the gospel with people. And prayer walks was like a huge thing. Like just going around praying for the city, praying for the place that we were at, all of that. I had an opportunity to work with Crew, so campus ministries in Ecuador. Peru, we did sports ministry. We were basically like kind of in like a gangster area, and we played volleyball to try to get the people out. And we also worked at like a preschool. Some other places, we like actually hiked into the Himalayas and shared the gospel with people who had never heard before.
Wow.
I did church services, worship, all different, worked with YWAM in Kenya, all different kinds of ministry.
So a lot of different experiences.
Yes.
So you came back from that and your life was changed? Like you said, I don't want to do this. I want to do missions. This is what I want to do with my life.
Yeah, I came back and I was like, yeah, I don't know. There's just something about it. And I think God really, like, I like people, and I think I realized, like, how relational I was and how much I just wanted to, like, sit with people and hear their stories and kind of tell their stories. So, like, on my race, we had a blog, and so I blog a lot, and I tried to, like, also find people and get their stories. Like, there's a couple in Peru where the husband had, like, basically left all of his family in Venezuela so that he could come to Peru to get them to come over, and he just, like, shared that with me. And then a guy in Ethiopia, he shared with me about his story of growing up in the dumps, in the slums, and how they had to fight for food when, like, the dump trucks would come in to dump the food, and they'd, like,
Oh my goodness.
fight over the food, how they had guns there, and basically everyone shared everything, and how, like, people in a ministry came and basically like saved him and got him out of there.
Wow.
And so just hearing, like, I don't know, that for me, like, hearing those incredible stories, just getting to sit with people, I think that's, like, one of my favorite parts of it.
So how did your family react when you came back and was like, I want to be a missionary?
My family's been, like, pretty receptive of everything, I'd say. My mom was like, well, if the Lord's calling you, like, I can't say no.
Right.
So I know it's hard for her to, like, let me go at times, but also, like, when God has that call on your life, like, you know you have to be obedient and go.
So over your time in all of those countries, is there anything that really stood out to you that you could share with us? Just some, maybe a crazy story.
Yeah. In Uganda, so my team, we, like, travel from country to country together, and then within the country we would split up. And in Uganda, we were together because we were having a debrief, and so we were at this hostel. And this hostel, they had, like, chalkboard walls where, like, anyone could write stuff on the walls, and there's all kinds of stuff written on them. And the squad had, like, most of the squad had left. My, like, team was there of, like, 6 of us, and we were staying a few extra days till we went to, like, our location. And I don't know, I just had this idea that I wanted to write scripture all over the walls, because when we were in Rwanda, we were painting the rooms, and what we did was, like, we wrote scripture all over the walls before we painted the walls. So, like, literally the rooms were covered in scripture. Yeah, and so, like, I was like, okay, well, these are chalkboard walls, like, they're for anyone to write on. I'm gonna write some scripture on them. So the one morning I woke up, I don't know, maybe like 3 a.m., 4 a.m., I erased all of the walls, like, all of the walls. And I literally, the whole morning until, like, everyone woke up, I wrote scripture, like, all over the walls. Like, I wrote, like, the Romans Road to Salvation and just, like, some of my favorite scriptures. And as I was doing it, some of the, like, cleaning ladies came out and they're like, wow. And, like, they're, like, really amazed. And then later, like, the guy who owns the hostel, he was like, what did you do to my walls? And I was like, well, you said they were, like, free to write over. He's like, well, not everyone wants to read all of this stuff. But he didn't make me take it down. And yeah, I think it stayed up for a while. Like, we stayed a few more nights and it was up. So I don't know, like, how long it stood up there, but yeah, that was kind of crazy because I was like, oh man, like, this guy is super angry. But it was a pretty awesome, I think, witnessing tool. And, like, the people on my team were like, wow, like, that was pretty bold of you. I was like, yeah.
So in most of the countries that you went to, were they pretty receptive to hearing the gospel, or were you in any places where they were just really against hearing that?
Yeah, all the places that we were at, they're pretty receptive. I feel like just every place, like, they're willing to listen to you, even if they didn't agree with it. But I feel like we were also in a lot of, like, honor cultures too. So, you know, like, they're going to listen to what you have to say, especially because you're a guest, or, you're of a different skin color, so they'll listen to you, but no one was ever rude about it.
Wow, that's good.
I'm curious to know if you, since you had the experience of doing the world race and a drastic change from wanting to be a veterinarian your whole life to missions, what would you, is there any advice you would give to somebody who's younger and has maybe not, they might be interested in missions, but they don't really know, like, I mean, I don't know if you would encourage everybody to do a 12-month or 11-month race, but is there something that you could look back and say, this was really important? Or even now as you're going through your journey with Globe, like anything that you would say, hey, I think this is probably really good for somebody to do?
Yeah, I think if it's on your heart, like at least take like a 1-week, 2-week trip. I mean, those are nothing compared to like being on the field long term, because when we did like the world race, I started to see people by like month 8 like starting to like get tired, and I think a lot of that also is just like you have to like stay in the scripture, you have to stay in the word, you have to be fed, and people weren't necessarily doing that. And I think that's something you need to know for like missions in general. Like you need to be rooted, you need those like deep roots, and you need that. You need Jesus like every day, and you need to find your time to spend with him. But yeah, I'd say if you're interested in it, at least like try it. I know there's like gap year programs. I mean, you can maybe volunteer with different organizations like Samaritan's Purse, like, I don't know, just try to get some kind of exposure, even visit a different place, because like if you're not in the United States, like other places are different, cultures are different. I'm really thankful for my sociology classes because we talked about that in some of them, like power distance, eye contact with people, time differences. Like, I mean, especially in Africa, we call it the African time, where you tell someone that you're going to meet at 1 and they might show up at 1:30 to 2:30 and it's still on time. Whereas like here in America, it's like you have to be there 15 minutes early or you're not on time.
Yeah.
What is power distance? I've never heard
like men, women.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, differentiation between different power.
Yeah,
okay.
like women in a community versus men in a community, children. Like,
okay.
Yeah.
That's great that you learned that in college, just part of sociology. You weren't even knowing you were preparing for missions.
Yeah, it was a cultural competence class, like of all classes that I took, and it was like one of my favorite classes. And I think that my job also prepared me a lot for the mission field, like working with adults with intellectual disabilities. I had groups of like five people, so they had like a mental retardation and then usually another disorder on top of that, like schizophrenia or intermittent explosive disorder. Some had autism. And then just like having a group of people, you plan out your day with a schedule, and then that might not be anything that you do for the day. Like, oh, you're supposed to take care of the animals, you're supposed to bake a cake today, you're supposed to do arts and crafts, but like someone has an episode and then that makes somebody else, and you learn to like adjust. And I think a lot of times on the mission field, like you have to adjust so much. And yeah, and like I'm a pretty structured person. Like I like schedules and all of that kind of stuff. So I think that was something that I had to learn. But I'm really grateful that I had like 6 years of experience to just like learn to be flexible and learn, hey, this isn't how it's going to go today. Like make a plan B.
I'm curious to hear, if you don't mind sharing, and we don't always go in this direction, but I'm curious to know what it's been like for you joining an agency, because you went out with the world race and then you made really good connections with people. And so you had, and I remember hearing you talk about just different people that you were, and just seeing too in the things that you would post, pictures, and it seems like you had great connection. What's it been like? Because I know you went back and forth for a little while.
For like 2 years.
And there was a time where you were almost ready to just throw in the towel and say, I'm not going to do this. And then you made the commitment. And then it seems like, from what I remember you saying, it was like just something switched, and you were really grateful for Globe. I hope you still are.
Yes, I am.
We'll have to edit it out if you're not. I'm just
Let's
kidding.
go back to that one episode. Well, what kind of a difference has that made for you? And what was that like in that process? Because I talk to a lot of people that would say very similar situation. That they'd say, I just don't know. You know, they're going to take an admin fee, and then there's going to be a lot of structure, and there's requirements, and I'm not going to be free to do what I want to do or what I feel like God's calling me to do. So, what was that journey like for you?
Yeah, so on the world race, we had a bit of structure. So, like, we had a budget and everything. We had a mentor, we had coaches. So, like, they, like, led us in a lot of things, even, like, discipleship. And during our debriefs and stuff, we'd have trainings. And then being on my own is kind of like you had to create those own disciplines for yourself, or you really had to find people to like check in with you. I'm really thankful that my coaches from the World Race, who I often visit here in Pensacola, have like stuck with me through this. And like even when I was doing missions later, like we still would have check-in calls and everything. And I think that's huge, just having people that you can talk to. Even if they don't necessarily understand exactly what you're going through, but just to be like, hey, I'm going through this, like, hear me out, pray for me. I have other friends at home, too, that I just reach out to, like, hey, like, I need you to pray for me. And, yeah, so, like, going independently is then what I would call myself. Like, I was with the World Race, and I went independently, just, like, raising my own funds, working with the different organizations, and I think I had to fight a lot more for like everything, and like I had to keep track of my finances and like every little thing because I wanted to be accountable, and I wanted like that integrity and to share that with people. And so then coming under Globe, yes, I fought it for a while, and I was like, those same things, like there's an admin fee, like, man, I'm already raising like all this money. Now they're gonna take 10% off of this. Like, that sucks. But
And you're not the only one that has said that.
Right. Because like the World Race didn't take off that like we knew of, you know. But I'm sure there is some in there like already factored into the price that we had to raise. But yeah, like the admin fee. But then coming into Globe, like you have, it's not just you have a team of people that you can reach out to. And so like there's the member care team, and that's been like even vital now since joining, just being able to like talk to them whenever you need, and just having people who understand you because they've been on the mission field. And that's just like a blessing. Because, yeah, you can talk to some people at home about things that are going on, but they don't really understand what it's like to be over on the field and to be experiencing it at that moment. And then you have people, like, looking out for your security. You have people who can do your newsletters for you, like a physical newsletter, send them out for you. So it's not my mom having to do it all the time, because my mom was, like, always depositing my checks for me and different things. So, like, it kind of takes some work off of her, too. So she was kind of like my personal team, I'd say. Yeah. But, yeah, you have, like, the finance, the security, the member care, just all the different aspects of it. And then that admin fee doesn't look so bad because it's helping, like, it's paying these people or helping with all of that.
Yeah, and I love that you pretty much immediately joined the member care team too. So using just your skill and your studies, your background, and your knowledge as well, experience overseas immediately to be able to reach out to other people as well. But in that, you still get to have member care. You're not just
So you're going back to Rwanda in September?
I was hoping to go back in September, but with like fundraising, because I have like a new budget now, because I'm actually, before I was just going over like 9 months, 10 months at a time and coming back to the States. But when I go back in January, I'm hoping to be there for a year or a bit longer. So just to make sure I have all that support that I need going over. I'm speaking at churches like in August and November. So just yeah, I won't be going back over till January, but I'll be going back over to Rwanda and then taking trips over to Kenya.
Okay, cool. So you hear that, listeners? She needs money. Go support her. So when you do go back to Rwanda, you're kind of, making your home there. Do you have a house, or where do you stay?
I don't yet. Usually when I'm there, I stay at Hope's Mission House, but Rabagirana is kind of in a little bit of a different direction. And when I was there in January, February, and March, like I had my own place, but I knew I wasn't like coming back right away, so I gave it up. So I'll have to find a new place, but it was exciting, like having my own place for the first time. A bit hard, a bit more difficult also because I was in a new area, and I have been going back and forth to Kenya, Rwanda, America the past few years, and culture shock still hit me this last time, which I wasn't expecting.
Going to Rwanda or
When I was
coming
in
back?
Rwanda, because I was in a new area, and so then I had to learn, like before I had all my people, like I had the lady that I went to get vegetables from, I had the kids down the street that would like run up to me and hug me, I had the people at Hope to like help me out with things, and then I was in this new place, and it's like I had to figure out where do I find the rice, like simple things, like they don't have the big supermarkets necessarily where I was, and I have to figure out the transportation there. There's not as many motorcycles, and how do I get here? How do I get there? So just a new learning curve.
How was that as a single woman?
Rwanda's a pretty safe place to be for single people. In general, like I usually feel safe, like even at night if I have to walk alone. I do have a bike there too. I have my own bike, so I try to take that like to and from work when I can. And that was kind of one of my decisions when I was deciding between Rwanda and Kenya, because Kenya, like almost everywhere, you have to have somebody else to go with you. And it's just like being a single person, being a single woman, you have to watch out a little bit more for yourself.
In your time in Rwanda, Kenya, any crazy stories from that time that you could share with us?
Yeah, Kenya too, like, so I haven't really talked about Kenya much, but usually when I'm there, I'm in a village called West Pokot. Yeah, when I was planning to go over to Rwanda in 2020, this guy reached out to me, Joram, and he was like, hey, do you want to like come help me with my ministry? I had met him and his wife like one time at the YWAM base on my race, but like really didn't know him much at all. But I was like, okay, sure, like let's try it. I was still like trying to figure out my way at that point. Like I didn't really know what direction I wanted to go with anything. So I was like, yeah, like let's just try anything. So I went over, and he wanted to take me to this place called West Pokot. And I was like, okay. I thought he was going to go with me, but he ended up sending me with a girl her name is Irene. She's now one of my best friends. And yeah, so she was from the area. She was now schooling. So she knew Pokot, Swahili, English. And so she was able to translate for me, take me around, show me the different places. And our first time in Pokot was pretty crazy. We were there for like 9 days maybe, and Pokot is like a hot desert area, and it's very hot. Like there's no electric, no running water in like the outskirts of the areas, a lot of times where we stayed. So we rode motorcycles pretty much from place to place to place, because we were visiting girls that he was sponsoring to go to school. Because in Pokot, the girls are basically seen as slaves there. Wow. They do all the cooking, fetching firewood, fetching water, all the different things. So he was going in trying to get them into school to give them a meaningful life, later. There's also polygamy there, so there's like 3 or 4 wives to a husband, and then like 24 or so kids between all of them. Yeah, and so just staying with all the different families, like sometimes we stayed in the huts, Sometimes we slept outside. The one time it was like raining and there's like 6 of us in this little hut that's probably smaller than this area here. The chickens were in there, the chicks, like everything. But it was a really cool time to like share the gospel with Irene's sister who was there. She was like, tell me some stories. So like I got to tell like the story of Jesus and the storm, you know, like things that related. And then one of the times we like hiked up a mountain to see a family. And so like these people, they travel like 2 hours one way just to come down to get food from the markets. And so we were up there for like 3 days. At that time, I wasn't really accustomed to the food that much, and ugali is like their main thing. So it's like maize, ground maize with boiled water, and you stir it, and it's this big, they call it like a thick porridge, but you use it to like scoop things with. And I didn't really eat a lot, and they were like super worried about me, and like, you're not eating enough, and I'm like, I'm fine, like. So then they were trying to like find things to kill for me, and I was like, But like when we were up there, and even down, when we were down at different places, like they fetch their water from the rivers. So we would go to the river to take baths. Like they're pretty free. They like go to the river, just strip down and like bathe. But Irene was really good with me, and she, you know, they'd like take me to a space all by myself so I could bathe. But then like the one day, like they got me water, I bathed, and I came back and I was like waiting for them. And I'm like sitting there. And then these cows come up to the watering hole and they walk in the watering hole, start peeing, and I was like, wait, this is the water that I just bathed with.
You're not clean.
I'm not clean. Oh, no. So I was like, yeah. So anytime you're in Pokot, though, it's just like you never know what you're getting into. You actually don't know if you're going to have water that day to like shower with. I've showered in like chocolate milk water, like it's been that dirty. And I was like washing, it was at night, so I didn't realize how dirty the water was. But then I was like rinsing out my hair and I had like all this debris in it. I was like, I think I should have not washed my hair today.
You were probably cleaner before the shower.
Oh man. And then like this, during this trip then, there's also this river. The bridge was out because they had had a lot of rain. And these guys ended up carrying me across the river because the water was like up to here. And they're like, you're white and you're not, like, we're not going to let you walk across. Like, we're going to carry you. So it was very uncomfortable, but they carried me across. The poor guy, the one guy, he like cut his foot on the rocks. But we made it to church. I was able to preach. Wow. But later to find out, like 2 years later when they're like rebuilding the bridge, that there's crocodiles in this river too. And like the people come here to bathe, like, I don't know. Wow. It's you find out all these things afterwards, which is, I guess, good. Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
That is crazy. That's pretty good.
And I think like one of the other stories would be like bedbugs. So yeah, I've had my fair share of bedbugs now, and the phrase like sleep tight, don't let the bedbugs bite is I will like never say that to anyone now because I know what it feels like. But we had this discipleship class for the girls for 3 days, and one of my co-leaders went into the bed to take a nap, and she comes back and she's like, I think I found a bed bug.
I think I'm itching already.
Couch bugs.
Yeah. And we're like, okay. Like, I've never experienced bed bugs at this point. I'm like, okay, I don't know anything about bed bugs really. So we're like, okay, tonight, like, we're going to sleep on the floor, not the bunk beds. Because we're like, maybe they won't get us then because, you know, bed bugs will sleep on the floor. So we saw there was powder, like, all over the bed, so they must have known, but they didn't tell us. But we go to sleep that night, and not even 2 hours into sleeping, I just feel, like, stuff crawling all over me, like, all over my neck, and I'm just like, Okay, I turn on my light and I shine my light on my sleeping pad, and there's just like bugs crawling all over it. And I try to like start killing them. And then I shine my my light on the bunk beds, the wooden bunk beds, and they're just like hundreds of bed bugs just crawling across the wood. And I'm like, oh no, like what are we gonna do? So I didn't get much sleep that night. I got real bit up. Like we tried to cover ourselves, but yeah.
My skin is
I know,
crawling.
mine too, and I have to tell you, I think I've heard this story before. And we were in a hotel just recently, and I was like, "Are there bed bugs here?" And I'm like, I swear I feel something crawling
She's
on my skin. And I was like, I think I turned the light on.
She's
Freaking
paranoid
out.
from the
Yes,
story.
I am.
But you were in Africa, right?
Yeah, but
They're in America
that doesn't
too.
matter. Like
America,
any
that's
place
why I'm
I
like-
go now, I'm like checking the beds, like checking the corners of the beds, because I've stayed with other families then
My head
too.
itches.
So are the bites itchy after?
They are like, I think they're worse than mosquito bites.
So you have all over your body.
I mean, and they're like, a lot of times they bite in like threes in an area. So like I had them on my neck, and yeah, I think my legs were okay, but a lot of like my neck, face area, and I was just like,
So you got rid of, you actually left there and you had bed bugs in your, like, your backpack and your clothes and stuff?
No. So
That was a different story.
So we washed all of our stuff then, because we thought that, you know, like our bags were there, like they're going to be all through our bags. So like we washed all of our stuff, hung them out. That's actually another funny story. When I was collecting all my clothes, like I collected them all, and then I was getting ready to fold them, and then there's a scorpion on my clothes. And I was like, okay, God, like what are you trying to teach me in this? Patience, I guess, or to rely on you. But
But you didn't get stung by the
I did not
scorpion.
get stung. I flung it towards the chicken, and I think the chicken ate it. But like I put all my stuff back in my bag, and I have this like air porter that goes around my 65-liter backpack. And then I just like put it out in the sun and like rotate it because it's really hot there, so it's like an oven. So like extreme heat, extreme cold, suffocation is usually what gets rid of them. So I think I was pretty good after that. I didn't have them.
How long did those bites continue itching?
Maybe like a week or so. Yeah, so now like
crazy
when
story.
people say like, yeah, don't let the bed bugs bite, I'm like, I don't wish that upon anybody. Like,
And you said you've had them multiple times.
yeah, unfortunately. So now you start to get used to like when you get bit or something, you're like checking everything. Okay, was it a mosquito? Was it a bed bug? Like what was it?
Is malaria a bad thing in Rwanda?
Yeah, malaria is pretty bad. On my world race, we actually had like 3 people who got malaria. Yeah, but there are like tablets you can take, but they don't necessarily prevent it. It just kind of helps sometimes, maybe hit or miss. At times now I don't take them because I don't like to be on it like months and months at a time. And it's kind of like an immunity thing. Like,
What language do they speak in Rwanda?
so Rwanda is Kinyarwanda and English and French and some Swahili. But Kinyarwanda is like the top. They try to teach English too, but yeah, you'll find a lot of French.
Are you learning that language? Do
I
you
am
speak
learning it. Yeah. I know more Swahili than I do Kinyarwanda, but I'm working on it.
Are they kind of similar?
They're both Bantu languages, so they are a bit similar in like noun classes and things. So I can kind of, because I know Swahili, it has been helping me a little bit, but just like Kinyarwanda, some of the letters that are put together make sounds that like I wouldn't think that they would make. So yeah.
So how are you learning?
I have a teacher over in Rwanda who I actually was taking lessons over there, and then she teaches online too. So I've been like 2 times a week meet up with her, and she's been very helpful.
That's cool. And so they speak Swahili in Kenya, right? So you'll have to kind of flip-flop
Go
your
back and
languages.
forth. Yeah. Yeah, because I was spending a lot of time in Kenya, and I had friends that were helping teach me. And then the Duolingo app, I was like doing that all the time. And unfortunately, Kenya and Rwanda, there's not a lot of information out on the internet to like teach yourself. So that's why I was like, okay, I definitely need a teacher for this.
And that's great that you're continuing on as you're stateside doing all your fundraising, that you're still working on your language.
Yeah. And I think that's a real benefit too, because then you're not distracted by ministry. Because I've done that like when I was over there doing ministry, and sometimes it's a bit difficult. Sometimes here too, but even more so I think when you're in ministry.
So we talked a good bit about Rwanda, so tell us a little bit more about Kenya, your work there.
Yeah, so I told you some of those crazy stories, but there's also in Pokot lately, the past year or 2 years, I've been taking proclaimers and audio Bibles to them, which has been like a really cool ministry. The proclaimers are just boxes. I think that faith comes by hearing is where I get them from. And you can put up to 4 languages on them. So I usually get Pokot, Turkana, which is the neighboring tribe, because Kenya has like 52 or 54 different tribes. They all speak their own language, plus Swahili is the main. So then I usually get like Pokot, Turkana, English, Swahili put on it. Though the village is pretty illiterate, most of the people, so like their native language is what you really want. So that's been really cool, handing those out. I've been trying to give them to like chiefs or husbands or, you know, people who have influence in the community. There, a lot of men don't go to church, so, but yet the men are the ones who like rule the communities. And those are the people who really need the change. So I'm trying to like get it to them. And it's been fun to like see the husbands, like when they get it, they just will like be there listening to it, and then they walk around with it. And so they're basically like sharing the gospel, you know, without even knowing it. And they'll have like the kids like come around, sit around them, like listen to this. And so that's been really cool. And then one of the people that I gave them to is a teacher. His name's Maniko, and he is a lot different than most of the African men there. He like loves children. He will like let them sit on their laps. A lot of people in Pokot, like the men have like really never even like held their children. But he will hold the children, like he loves them, even if they're not his own. So I think he's very influential. And when I gave him this proclaimer, actually in December when I was there, he's like, Kelly, like you don't know what this is going to do for this community. Like if you keep bringing these and we keep sharing them, like you don't know what it's going to do. Like you might not see it now, but it's going to produce so much fruit. And I think that was really powerful to me to hear that. Because like a lot of times like you don't see things right away. Like I've been going back to this community for a while, and you don't necessarily always see the changes, but it's there and it's happening. Yeah, and so that's been fun. And then I take like micro SD cards because it's a poor community, but almost every family has a cell phone. So the micro SD card, again, you can put multiple languages. If for some reason they have a smartphone, I also have like the Jesus film on there, so they can watch the Jesus film. They're just like transformative tools to use. And then when I'm with the different families, I've probably stayed in like 15 different homes in Pokot. But at the end of each visit, I try to show them the Jesus film, which is in their own language, the Bible, and it's been so fun. There's a grandma the one time where we were actually doing it with the girls we were discipling, and she just happened to be there and she watched it with us. And the next morning she's like, did you see this? Did you see that? Did you see this? And she just reminded me of like the woman at the well, you know, after Jesus like told her like all these things about her, and she just like went and was like sharing it with everyone. Like that's what this grandma was like. And it was just like, wow, you know, this is just one time, like just imagine like all these other times that you're sharing it too. And
I heard you say you stayed in 15 different homes.
probably.
So you're staying with the locals.
Yeah.
In the village?
Yeah.
So you have to have some crazy stories on things that, like, living in some of these homes. Like, wow. Talk about cross-cultural.
Right.
And you're living with the locals right there.
Yeah. Sometimes I do sleep in my tent. I've been trying to sleep in my tent more because I feel like I've been finding bed bugs more often in the homes. And yeah. But yeah, sometimes, like I said, like sometimes we sleep like 5 or 6 people in a home, or I've slept outside, and right before that time we slept outside, the boys were coming back from the fields from herding, and they found a snake, and they killed the snake, and then we slept outside.
Oh my God.
And it was a snake that was like this big.
So when you're staying with these families, do they like cook you dinner, and are you just like in their home living life with them?
Yeah, living life with them, helping do the chores. Like I've gone to help fetch water. I have
Put it on your head?
I mean, I carry it like on my shoulders, and I've carried the 10-liter, I've carried the 20-liter like once or twice, but they get really mad at me when I try to carry it because they're like, you're not used to this, like don't do it, like this is our work. But I'm like, no, I want to experience what it's like. Because sometimes we have walked like half an hour or more to go to the river to get water.
Wow.
And it just makes you so thankful for every drop. And like when you're using it to shower, you're like, okay, how little can I use and still be clean?
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I've collected water. They cook outside a lot. I mean, all the time, unless they have like an inside kitchen, but it's still outside.
Still using firewood.
Yeah, charcoal. So I've helped a little bit with that, making the ugali, because I'm like, teach me, like I want to learn. But a lot of times they're like, no, you can't be near the fire. And I'm like, at home I camp, I know what it's like. But it's a little bit different, but they'll let me cut like tomatoes and onions for the food.
So are they kind of like protective of you, or do they feel like since you're white from America, you can't do it?
Maybe a little bit of both. Like they don't want to see me get hurt, but at the same time, like that's like their hospitality too. Like we don't want you to do the work. But then it's like, but I want to know how you live. Like I want to like see your lives through your eyes. And so I try to get them to like understand that. And you know, as I've been going back, because I stay with a lot of the families, like the same families, like they'll let me do more things like the next time I come, because I'm not a guest anymore. I'm more like family. And yeah, even the one family that I go to, there's a little girl, and she's actually named after me. So like you never know the impact that you're going to make in these families. But like that relationship aspect of like any part of ministry, like it's so important. And like I said, it's like my favorite part.
That's so cool.
There's still another part of what you do there that you haven't shared with us about. You take stuffed animals.
Yes.
Right? And there are ladies here in the U.S. that make these?
Actually, there's a family in Kenya that makes them. Yeah. So this all came about because my grandma used to make stuffed animals, pillows, and eyeglasses here in Pennsylvania and take them to hospitals to give out to people. And she just liked to do that. And one of the times when I was home because of COVID things, like, I don't know, God, like things just started happening. Like people were like, you work with tailoring students, let me give you some material, let me give you thread, let me give you polyfill. And then I found this article on my grandma, and I was like, what if I took this idea over there, but not to Rwanda, to Kenya, to one specific family that I had stayed with who is a little bit like under the poverty level. And the mom is a tailor, and I was like, what if I ask her to like sew these for me? I'll pay her to sew them, and then we can deliver them to children's homes, orphanages, like all of that.
Wow.
And so when I went back, like I took material with me, I took chalk, you know, like all the things, some of my grandma's patterns.
Wow.
And we made them. And Kim, her son, like he helped draw some new patterns for us. So now we have like a giraffe and an elephant head and a little whale. But like we have the dog and the cat design that my grandma had made, and it's a whole family affair. Like sometimes different people trace them, cut them out, and some days we just have like stuffing parties, like when I've been at the house where we're all just like stuffing them and then finishing up the sewing touches. And so it's been really cool to see. It's like a multi-fold ministry because it's like it's keeping my grandmother's memory alive because she's the one that passed away when I was on the race. And then it is, you know, like sharing the gospel message. Like you give it to the kids and then try to share Psalm 139, like you're fearfully and wonderfully made, like God knit you in the womb, like you're tailor-made.
Wow.
And to see some of the kids receive them is like just the most joyful thing that you can see.
That's really neat.
That is so cool. I'm sure your grandmother would be so proud.
Oh, yeah.
Just to know she has a part in that too. That is just so, that's so cool. But I think we're gonna start wrapping up here. We like to ask people if they have any advice for somebody who might be interested in going into missions. Any advice or tips or, you know, just anything like what you wish you might have known before you got started.
Just be open to what the Lord has for you. Open hands is what I like to say. Open hands, open heart. Because you might have an idea too, and he might then like take you in a total different direction. Like I can't tell you how many times where I have like had things planned to a T and then something happens and changes, but like the change has been so beautiful. And so like be open to like what the Lord has, like really seek him for what he has for you. And like try to learn the culture. Like when you're there, like sit with people, hear their stories, really see them, really know them. And you'll just be amazed. Because even when you start to say like greetings to them, like just simple words in their language too, you just see them light up because they see that you're trying and they see that like you see them not just as like a thing, but you see them as a person. Oftentimes they're like, you know, in Africa, they see white people as like these rich people who have everything. And I try to tell them, you know, like, but you guys are so rich in like your culture and your languages. Like we don't necessarily have that in America because we're like so independent. And like some of them, they speak like 3, 4, 5 different languages. And I'm like, I speak English and I'm trying to learn yours.
Well, thank you for sharing with us today, Kelly. It's just been a treasure to have you here. And I will never forget your bedbug story, I'm pretty certain.
In a bad way.
Oh, yeah.
It'll haunt her.
It already
Check
has.
your bed tonight.
I know, yeah.
Oh, goodness.
Thank you for sharing with us, Kelly.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. It was nice to get to know you a little bit more, too. Thank you guys so much for listening to Crazy Missionary Stories. If you are listening on Spotify, don't forget to follow us and give us a 5-star review. If you're on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe. And of course, share it with your friends. Thank you guys for listening. See you next time.